Hey guys, welcome back to another video. I'm Brian, and if you are here to learn how to grow your own organic fruits and vegetables easily and inexpensively, then start now by clicking subscribe, clicking the bell icon so you don't miss anything. Let's get started. This is a follow-up video to the growing tomatoes video that I put up about 2 weeks ago. If you haven't seen that one and somehow you got here first, I would highly recommend going back and watching that one before you watch this one, and I'll put a link right up here to that video. First of all, I have to say how appreciative I am to the huge response that I got for that video. It was kind of overwhelming in a good way. There's been so many comments and I've tried to get back to so many of them, but I'm kind of getting behind on that. And so that's exactly what this video is for, because there were a lot of questions that were asked many times. And so I thought I would take a moment to make a video that strictly addressed those questions that somehow I missed in the first video. So first off, there was a big elephant in the room that I just have to address up front. And that was that in the intro of the video, I called tomatoes a vegetable. Right after the intro, about 30 seconds later, I did call them fruits. But actually, tomatoes aren't fruits or vegetables. They're actually berries, like bananas. Yep, tomatoes and bananas are berries. So are peppers, cranberries, eggplant, and kiwis. You know what's not a berry? Strawberries, raspberries, and blackberries. They are actually called aggregate fruits in botanical circles. But that's just the thing. I'm not a botanist. I'm a home gardener with 30 years experience talking to a bunch of other home gardeners that may either be brand new or have twice the experience that I have. We're just a bunch of gardeners looking to share our ideas, tips, inspiration. So please forgive me if I may use a more general term that's known by a wider variety of people, because I'm looking to use words and things in the garden that everybody, no matter what their experience level, can relate to. All right, so let's get on with the questions. As a side note, there were a lot of requests to put links to a lot of the products that I discussed in the video. I've now done that, so I have all the links in the other video, and I'll put the links down in the description for this video as well. So the first question, a few people wanted to know some tips for growing tomatoes in containers. Now, first of all, growing tomatoes or anything in containers, the first thing you want to pay attention to is keeping them moist. Containers are much more difficult in that because they're a smaller self-contained unit and they dry out a lot faster than tomatoes or any other plant in the ground. So in the heat of the summer especially, you're going to have to check on those once or twice a day to make sure they maintain that evenly moist soil that they need. The container should be about 20 inches, and you can use, you don't want to use terracotta because terracotta dries out really quickly. You can use wood or you can use plastic. I can already hear the screaming about plastic. If you don't want to use plastic, don't use plastic. Or you can put a terracotta pot inside a plastic pot, and that plastic pot will kind of protect it a little bit from drying out. You want to start with the container filled maybe 6 to 8 inches with the potting soil. And then as that tomato grows, you can then fill in the soil around it, so you still get to take advantage of the tomato being planted deeply and rooting along the stem. It's probably easiest to use a determinate variety as they stay a little more compact, but there are some indeterminates you can use. If you just go on Google and do a search for best tomatoes for containers, you're going to get a lot of choices and you can look through them and see which one sounds good to you. All right, the next question. This was a big one. A lot of people were asking about eggshells and Epsom salts. So eggshells are typically added to the soil to increase the calcium in the soil, in turn to prevent blossom end rot like we discussed in the other video. So if you're going to use eggshells, I don't happen to use them. Most soils have plenty of calcium in them. If you're going to use them, definitely crush them up pretty fine and mix them into the soil. Don't just put them on top. That's going to help them break down and allow the plants to get access to those nutrients. But again, most soils do have enough calcium. It's the inconsistent watering that creates a situation where the plant cannot draw the calcium out of the soil into the plant. So definitely, again, keeping the moisture levels pretty much consistent are the best way to do that. As far as Epsom salts, I didn't include it. I don't use it now. I've used it twice. One year that I used it, I did not get blossom end rot, and one year that I used it, I did get blossom end rot. And so the year that I got the blossom end rot was actually a year I was trying a new watering system that actually wasn't working out too well, and so the plants were watered inconsistently. So the jury was still out on that, but I never really used it again. And then I actually found a study that was done by, it was a research article from the North Dakota State University Agriculture Department, and their conclusion was that Epsom salts does not stop blossom end rot, it actually leads to more of it. The reason is Epsom salt, blossom end rot we already talked about, is an inability or a calcium missing in the plant. Epsom salts does not have calcium. It actually is magnesium sulfate. And the problem with that is magnesium and calcium ions in the soil both compete to be taken up into the plant. And so adding magnesium to the soil could actually create a situation where the calcium isn't able to be drawn up into the plant as much as it should be. So I don't use it. I know people swear by it, but I only put on this channel what I've either used or what I have found through experimentation to work well for me. The next question was about BT for pest control. Now that was my mistake. In the video, if you go back, you'll notice when I started talking about tomato worms, I said that was going to lead us to the second spray I used. But I never said the second spray because I got so excited to tell you about the black light that I totally forgot. So that was my mistake. But BT, it's back, I don't know how to pronounce it really, so I'm just going to put it right here on the screen. And Bacillus thuringiensis. But I do use it. It's actually really great stuff. It gives excellent organic control of leaf-eating little critters like cabbage loopers and tomato worms, but it does not harm insects that don't eat the leaves of your plant. So a lot of the beneficial insects, right? After the worms eat the plant, it actually goes into their digestive system and ruptures it, and then the worm dies. Good stuff. Okay, so then there's also some talk on the comments about me being very forceful in saying that keeping the leaves dry is very important to ward off bacterial disease and things like that, and yet I was spraying with the BT and the aspirin spray, and so isn't that contradictory? Yes, it kind of is. But have you ever watched a commercial on TV for medication for humans? Side effects include acne, nausea, dizziness, heart palpitations, death. And yet, our doctors still prescribe them, and we still take them. Some of us don't. But the point is the doctor weighs the risk with the benefit. Same thing here, and the benefit far outweighs the risk. Now, to minimize that risk, if you're spraying more than one thing, let's say you're spraying BT and aspirin at the same time, do it at the same time. Then you're getting two things done, one application, minimizing the wetness of the leaves. You don't have to spray it till they're dripping, just so you see kind of a shininess to the leaf. It's best to spray early in the morning. When the sun comes out and is hot in the middle of the day and you're spraying, the little water droplets actually magnify the sun's rays and will burn the leaves. So spray it in the morning so it has half a day to dry out before the sun gets it, and don't spray in the evening because then the leaves will stay wet all night. So frequency of the spraying was also a big question. You want to spray the BT and the neem as needed. If you can pick off the tomato worms, you don't even need to spray. But if you need to spray those two, just do it as needed. As far as the aspirin is concerned, every couple of weeks is sufficient. If you're going to have a lot of wet weather and maybe high humidity or a rainstorm, do it before that so you get a good bit of protection in there before that happens. Does the aspirin trick work for other plants? Now, the only research I found was for plants in the nightshade family. So that's tomatoes, potatoes, eggplant, peppers. So you can use it on all of those plants. There was also a lot of questions about rock phosphate versus superphosphate. And are there any alternatives? Rock phosphate is an organic, balanced source of phosphate. It is slow release, so it feeds over a long time. The only downfall that it has is it doesn't move through the soil very quickly. And so that's why in the video I said plant the tomato right on top of it. Because if you mix it into the soil, chances of it finding it that year are pretty slim. Superphosphate, on the other hand, is not organic. It's rock phosphate that has been treated to become more quickly available to the roots. But in doing that, they've thrown off the balance. And as soon as you put it in the soil, it's going to grab on and tie up a lot of the minerals and nutrients that the plant actually needs to be able to uptake into the system. So that's why I don't use it. Do you have any suggestions for vine ripening tomatoes in a mild or cool climate? Yes, it is true that tomatoes in general need warmth to ripen well, but some don't. And you can, again, Google to see tomatoes for cool climates. I did that, and there was a ton to choose from that will ripen in cool climates. Another study I found that was that if you take off some of the leaves over the ripening fruit, it will actually help keep them a little bit warmer in the daytime and cooler at night, and that will speed ripening just a little bit. All right, so the next subject was rats. And there was, I have to say, I think I loved reading the rat comments more than any, because a lot of people have a lot of creative ideas to get rid of rats. But one of the questions was that they couldn't use rat traps because they had squirrels. Now, we have a ton of squirrels in our garden, almost year round. I never had any squirrels trapped in the rat traps. Maybe I got lucky. But to be sure, if you really are concerned about that, or maybe you've had that experience, squirrels actually are around in the daytime and they sleep at night. Rats are just the opposite. So you can put the traps out at night, bring them in the morning, and squirrels will never even see them. Somebody did mention in the comments that they put lights in their backyard or in their garden and left them on all night long, and that kept the rats away, which makes total sense because rats hate light. So I might actually even try that one. Okay, so there was also a concern, which has happened to me. The tomato flowers dry up and fall off and they get no tomatoes. Now, there are a few reasons this might happen. If the weather has been above 85 degrees Fahrenheit or below 55 degrees Fahrenheit for several days in a row, tomatoes are going to stop producing. And so it might just be one of those things where you have to wait, and then once the weather gets back into that range, they'll start producing again. Another thing is underwatering. If the plant dries out, the flowers are going to dry out, and if they dry out before they're pollinated, then you're not going to get any tomatoes and they will fall off. Another thing, and probably the main reason, other than weather, is they're not pollinated. Now, maybe you have a lack of pollinators in your garden, or they just need some help. I actually have a video, I'm going to put a link up here. It is a 1-minute fix to get 10 times the amount of tomatoes by helping out the pollinators. and it's not adding flowers, although that does help. So check out that video. In fact, you can go check it out right now because that was the last question. So again, thanks guys for everything. Thank you for watching. Subscribe, give me a thumbs up if you will, and I'll see you on the next video.